Before I get started, I just have one lightweight comment to make, and that is this a good-looking group of people or what? They worked their collective tails off on this operation, and we are proud to have them as part of this today. I am Ron Miller. I'm the United States Marshal for the District of Kansas, and there are several partner agencies that are involved in this press conference today that are here that would be available to talk with you or answer questions as we go along through the press conference. We'll try to keep it brief and we'll try to keep it moving, but I want to be sure I give credit and thanks to all the partner agencies that were involved in this operation. I'm the United States Marshal for the District of Kansas. I have been the Marshal since about 2015, early 2015. And one of my goals has been to work closely with our law enforcement agencies throughout the state. I am a career law enforcement officer in Kansas. I spent 34 years with the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department, the last 6 as chief, and then was appointed police chief in Topeka and was there until 2014 and then was appointed the U.S. Marshal in 2015. The United States Marshals Service is the nation's oldest and most versatile federal law enforcement agency, and by virtue of what they do and their mandate, federal mandate, they are involved in virtually every federal law enforcement operation that occurs. They were founded in 1879 as part of the first Judiciary Act, and the first 13 U.S. Marshals were appointed by President Washington. And every U.S. Marshal in the United States since that time has been appointed by a President of the United States. The Marshal Service has several missions. Among them, without going through them all in the interest of brevity, some of them have to do with protecting the federal judiciary. Some of them have to do with arresting violent fugitives, managing seized assets that are seized before they are forfeited by a court, housing and transporting federal prisoners, and operating the witness security program. What brings us here today is the mission on apprehending violent fugitives. Operation Triple Beam is a nationwide collaborative effort between the Marshals Service and other federal partners and the state and local law enforcement agencies in the various cities throughout the 50 United States and the U.S. territories. The logos of the individual agencies that were involved in this operation are on the bottom of the poster, so you can see which ones were involved in this operation. The title, Operation Triple Beam, comes from a triple beam scale. A triple beam scale is a scientific scale used to measure minute amount of substances. Drug dealers use them to weigh drugs that they're going to sell on the street. We adopted the name Operation Triple Beam because there are 3 functions of Operation Triple Beam that are important to us, 3 measures, and they are fugitive apprehension, proactive street-level enforcement, and the seizure of illegal weapons, narcotics, and money. You can see some of the weapons that were seized in this operation on the table today. The Operation Triple Beam is a collaborative effort. It is an effective method to reduce crime in our communities throughout the United States. Often we hear the question, what can we do about violent crime in America today? What can we do about all this gun crime that's in America today? Well, this is an example of what we can do in law enforcement that collaborates with and involves all 3 branches of government, whether that's the legislative branch, the executive branch where the law enforcement folks are housed, or the judiciary where all these individuals who are arrested end up with their day in court. All 3 branches of government come together, and federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies come together to make this a successful initiative. It was initiated in 2010. There have been over 80 operations nationwide with 10,000 arrests, 2,000 illegal firearms seized, and in fiscal year 19, there have been 12 Operation Triple Beams in the United States, 2 were in Kansas, and 12 in FY18 and 7 in FY17. So the number of triple beams increases and the breadth expands because it's a successful operation, a successful collaborative operation between all of our federal partners and state and local law enforcement agencies. I'm not going to read all the statistics. They're on the poster. You're free to have them, and we also put them in the press packet. Wichita PD guys put them in the press packet so you have them. But notably, there were over 900 arrests. But the most important number is 556 felony arrests that occurred in and around Wichita. If you add that to the 374 misdemeanor arrests, that's how you arrive at the number of 930 total arrests. But 556 felony arrests for people who already had warrants for their arrest. We did not target neighborhoods. We did not target a demographic. We did not run sweeps in neighborhoods just to arrest people. We were arresting people who had warrants for their arrest issued by a judge with a case to be presented by the district attorney or the U.S. attorney, both of whom are present today, to make make inroads and reduce crime in Wichita, Kansas, to make it a safer community. That was the idea. We recovered 82 firearms. As I said, some of them are here in front. We seized narcotics with a street value of just under $1 million and recovered $142,000 in U.S. currency. All 3 branches of government have come together on these operations to make all of the procedures work, the funding work, the appropriations work, pass the laws, whether they be at the federal or state level, to make all this come together so that it is a collaborative effort to answer the question, what are we doing about violent crime in America? Where is crime happening? What are we doing about it as a community? And these are the answers that this initiative tries to address. So all 3 of the branches come together, including the legislative, which both passes the various laws, federal and state, and appropriates the funding. So it is my pleasure at this time to introduce to us somebody that we all know, known a long time. We are glad that he is with us today, U.S. Senator Jerry Moran.
Marshal, thank you. Thank you very much. Marshal, thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Marshal, I'll soon be in Dodge City, the home of the most famous U.S. Marshal. At least growing up, that was the case for me. It's an honor to be here. It's an honor to be with these men and women who serve our community on a daily basis. We're all looking for evidence that government can do its job, that we can have success, and Operation Triple Beam is one of those circumstances in which it works. Government coming together is making a significant difference. In this case, making Americans, Kansans, citizens of Sedgwick County much more safe and secure. And I'm here to commend the Marshal, the prosecutors, the district attorney, the U.S. attorney, the sheriff, and the police department, all in their efforts of combination. The list is long of the cooperation. I chair the subcommittee that appropriates money for the Department of Justice. I chair the subcommittee that appropriates money for the FBI. We want to make certain that the dollars that we decide to spend in Washington, D.C., the taxpayer dollars, they find their way back home. They find their way to Kansas. They find their way to Wichita and to Sedgwick County. And we want to see that, in fact, we know that the only way that those dollars will be wisely spent with success in the operation is when there's cooperation between all the various law enforcement agencies. And Operation Triple Beam is the example of that, and the success that we had here in Wichita is really something that the whole nation has taken a look at, has seen that success. And so I am here only for the purpose of saying thank you to those who commit their lives to a safer and more secure Kansas, and to thank the folks who participated in Operation Triple Beam. and to applaud that effort. I will do everything I can to provide the support necessary for this kind of success to continue. I will support appropriations that bring law enforcement agencies together, and that local, state, and federal cooperation is our path to success. Thanks for the opportunity to join you here. Congratulations to all who participated, and thank you very much for making government work well for the well-being of Kansas citizens. Thank you. Thank you.
Local partnership is critical in these operations, and the local law enforcement agencies know their communities best. The police departments and sheriff's offices know their community the best. They respond to and investigate the crimes. They deal with the local issues that happen. They deal with the community. They deal with all the issues that involve community policing and positive relationships with the community. And that is certainly no exception in Wichita, Kansas. The Wichita Police Department did an exemplary job in this. We had great support from Chief Ramsey and Deputy Chief Salcido, who can't be with us today, but it is my distinct pleasure to introduce the Wichita Deputy Chief, Anna Hatter, for her remarks.
Good afternoon. I'm Deputy Chief Anna Hatter. I'm the commander of the Wichita Police Department Field Division. I'd also like to acknowledge quickly all of the distinguished guests in the room. Thank you for your presence here today. Today we gather to discuss Operation Triple Beam, which took place in Wichita between June 1st and July 31st. The operation was conducted in partnership with the U.S. Marshals Service, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and our federal and local partners. We would like to give special thanks to Senator Moran, who was instrumental in bringing all these partners together, leading to the success of this project. Police Chief Gordon Ramsey is always supportive of innovative ways to address violent crimes in our communities, and he was excited to have our agency involved in this project. The focus of Triple Beam was to reduce crime in our community by focusing on the most violent offenders. This operation was a success. Historically, WPD has seen an increase in violent crime during the summer months. During June and July of 2018, WPD reported 42 shootings. In 2019, during Triple Beam, we reported 25, which was a reduction of 40%. Perhaps more significantly, shootings have been trending upward for the past 5 years. These numbers represent the first downturn, and it is quite significant. To date, the numbers are not only below 2018 by almost 30%, but are also actually below 2017, and may still finish the year below what was reported in 2016. Year to date, homicides are down by 30% and are currently below what was reported at this time in 2017. This initiative was data-driven. Our crime analysis and problem-solving unit identified the time of year that violence is highest. We identified the areas where violence concentrates the most, and we targeted the most violent offenders in those areas, driving crime and the fear of crime in our neighborhoods. WPD had specialty units in place specifically created for criminal street gangs and narcotics, and their focus was to use their skills primarily in the identified micro-locations, as often the problem is just one house or business in a neighborhood. Personnel involved adjusted their normal work schedules to accommodate the mission of crime reduction. The impact was unprecedented. I would like to acknowledge Sergeant Jason Bartell for his commitment in leading our internal team to achieve such impressive results. This operation has resulted in a safer Wichita. The Wichita Police Department will continue to work with our local, state, and federal partners to make Wichita a safer place. Thank you.
The efforts of the law enforcement folks, the efforts of the people who make the arrests, only occurs when there's a warrant that has been issued for this individual or these individuals, and we are actively searching to find the folks that have warrants that exist for their arrest. So any time that we're involved in one of these operations, there is an associated prosecution of this case. Most of these felony cases, the vast majority of these felony cases, all resulted in cases that were being pursued by the Sedgwick County District Attorney's Office. These are individuals that were priority cases for them. These were individuals who were wanted, and the resources needed to come together to be able to find these people. The District Attorney's Office carries the ball once we arrest these individuals and put them in jail. We're going to talk about that in just a minute with the sheriff, but at this point, I would like to introduce the 18th Judicial District of Kansas District Attorney Mark Bennett.
Well, thank you for the introduction. You've heard me say this before in other contexts, that we are in a time of limited resources when it comes to law enforcement, the judiciary, whether it's judges, public defenders, prosecutors, law enforcement officers. And so as we try to address the changing needs of our communities, and meet the issues that come occasionally with rising crime, trying to target our use of our resources is important. Sorry, long morning, I guess. I'm just getting back from vacation, so I'm not used to this. What I'm trying to say is that the way we do this, because we don't have unlimited resources, the way we do this most effectively for our communities is when we partner with our law enforcement collaborators in the federal, state, and local arena. And this is a good example of that, when we all get together and work together in a collaborative fashion, pool our resources, pool our efforts. You have this kind of response that we got here. For 500 felons taken off the street, 82 guns, the laundry list of drugs and money taken from the people who were selling drugs and guns in our communities. This is a significant impact. It's a small group of people in any community, and Wichita is no different, but it's a small group of people who are committing all the crimes. You don't have to go stopping cars on Central Avenue and pulling people out and doing checkpoints to reduce crime. If we do what we did here, cooperate among ourselves, use information, data gathered that is targeting our use of resources and going after the actual folks that are the ones committing the crimes, who are putting shell casings on the ground, who are putting drugs into our communities, we can have a significant impact. And this is, I think, an example in this community of, I guess, 21st century law enforcement. There was a time, perhaps, when we had the numbers. We don't. So if we're going to outnumber the bad guys, it's going to take a cooperation among all agencies, federal, local, and state, and that's what we did here today. That's what we did over the last month. And so I appreciate the opportunity, Senator Moran and his efforts to bring this sort of attention to Sedgwick County. And I think the citizens can be pleased to see that there was no territorialism or anything like that. The feds, the local law enforcement, and the state agents all get together, do what's best for our community, and we have a positive impact like this with this concurrent reduction in violent crime in our community. So I'm pleased to have been a part of it. And now we'll go about the business of processing those 500 felony cases through the court system. Thank you.
So when you arrest 556 people, or if you add in the misdemeanor arrests that all have to be processed, that's 900 people that are arrested and processed into the criminal justice system. And you know about the arrests and the warrants. But what sometimes we don't talk about, or doesn't get the attention it should, is what happens to these people when we arrest them. You'll see photographs or video footage of them being arrested and taken to jail. That's what happens. They get arrested, they go to jail. Well, but what happens to them after they go to jail? Well, that subject went to jail. Great. What happens to that person when they go to jail? That's an integral part. That's an integral part of this operation. The Sedgwick County Sheriff's Office was a full partner in this initiative. Their warrants unit guys made dozens of arrests, along with the rest of us, working together to make these arrests. But there were hundreds of people that were processed into the Sedgwick County Detention Center. So it is my pleasure to introduce the Sheriff of Sedgwick County, Jeff Easter.
Good afternoon. I appreciate the opportunity to come up here and speak. First off, I'd like to thank Senator Moran. If it wasn't for his efforts to be able to supply the resources we needed down here, that wouldn't have happened, so thank you again. We appreciate the partnership with the U.S. Marshals Service. That partnership is long-standing. Operation Triple Beam obviously was a fantastic operation, but the Sedgwick County Sheriff's Office works day in and day out with the U.S. Marshals Service every day with our warrant section trying to pick up these folks that have the most serious warrants. And that will continue. I want to make sure the citizens understand this doesn't just stop there. That will continue from this point forward. Again, the partnership that we share with the District Attorney's Office, the U.S. Attorney's Office, the FBI, the U.S. Marshal Service, the DEA, and ATF and the other local partners is imperative on something like this magnitude. We had a couple deputies that were assigned to the task force that were able to assist on it, but the manpower that was provided by our other local partner was imperative of how this has helped the community in itself. The last thing I'd like to say is that from a jailing standpoint, we can arrest them all day long. It's coming from a standpoint of I used to do that all day long, but where do we put them afterwards? Plain and simple. That was 900 arrests, and I really want to reach out to the jail staff on the tremendous effort that they had to do, the amount of overtime they had to work to make sure that all these people were processed properly, all of our protocols were followed, and then the releasing procedures. But most of these folks, I can tell you, either have a substance abuse issue or a mental health issue, and we've got to start looking at this differently, in my opinion. When we start talking about jail reform and prison reform and those type of things, there has got to be something for our DA's office and the judges. If prison isn't an option, then we've got to start doing some type of treatment center here within the state of Kansas, because this is not going to end. So, but again, thank you very much, and I appreciate you inviting us to be a partner.
All right, one last comment, and that's to amplify something that the sheriff said, and that is it doesn't stop here. You'll recall that Wichita has been designated as a public safety partnership site, and there will be resources made available. We attended a press conference a couple of weeks ago that involved the U.S. Attorney and his staff and the various folks that are involved in this, from Project Safe Neighborhoods to the Department of Justice. So this is kind of a jump start to get that thing started so that we are able to move forward with as much success as we can, collaboratively working together. So that ends the presentation part of the press conference. I'm sure any of these folks would stand for questions if any of you have any questions.
Can you please address why Wichita was chosen? And I know you mentioned there was another city in Kansas. Can you also talk about that one?
Yes. Wichita was chosen because it's a city that if you use data analytics and you figure out the amount of violent crime that exists based on its population, that it becomes eligible to be considered for an Operation Triple Beam. You might suspect that there are other cities that have made requests to be Operation Triple Beam. Wichita had the analytics to suggest that this would be a good place for it to occur. And with over 550 felony arrests, I think the data proved out the fact that Wichita was an excellent candidate for this to happen. The other city where this happened in Kansas was Kansas City, Kansas, earlier this year. A few hundred people were arrested there. More than 100 people were arrested there, but nowhere near the number of people that were arrested in Wichita, largely because KCK is much smaller than Wichita. Wichita is a much bigger community, a much bigger area. But those are the two cities in Kansas, and there have been 12 triple beam operations in FY19, and there are other cities that are currently underway as some of those operations culminate. So that's how Wichita was picked, and that's the other city in Kansas. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
What continues now? What happens now that the triple beam is over here in Wichita?
The triple beam operation is the 60 to 120 day collaborative operation, but all the rest of the time, The Wichita community or the Wichita area has a contingent of U.S. Marshals and local and state law enforcement agents that work the triple beam operation as this part of this operation, but the rest of the time, it is the Kansas Fugitive Apprehension Task Force. These guys are working here every day. I'm sure you've heard or seen or been aware of some high-profile arrests that have been made by local and state federal law enforcement agents on a daily basis. These guys guys and gals work day in and day out in this, and we have a task force in Wichita, we have one in Topeka, and we have one in Kansas City, so that we're leveraging these assets, and if we need to loan them between cities, we'll do that. But if we don't, then the areas where they have primary responsibility are who deals with this the rest of the time. So what happens going forward is we'll continue with the operations that we have, we'll continue making arrests, we'll continue doing our best to collaborate to reduce crime in Wichita.
I believe this question would be for the DA and maybe the sheriff. The question's along the line of, with 500 plus felony arrests, how do you feel this will help in the years to come regarding violent crime?
Well, first of all, you get the folks off the street. That's the obvious answer. And with the 82 guns being collected, another successful, impactful event as a consequence of this. Long term, the goal of the criminal justice system is to hold people accountable and to hopefully reform their behavior. And so that's 500 folks going into the system. Now, I will echo what the sheriff said earlier, though. This is what law enforcement can do. They have, cops go out, they find the guy who's had the warrant issued, pick him up, arrest him, bring him to jail. But we as a society have a larger conversation to take place, and that is, what do we do with people when we know two of the biggest crime drivers, or at least things that impact crime, are going to be drugs. You've heard, I feel like I'm looking at the same people, Amy, and you guys are all looking at me going, I've heard this before, but there's not a new message every week. It's the same message consistently every day, and that is, when 14% of my cases that come through the door on any given day have at least one count of methamphetamine involved in it. When 60% of the people who are coming into the criminal justice system, or who are housed in the criminal justice system, be it a prison or a jail, have some form of either co-occurring drug and alcohol abuse or mental health issue. The question is one I'll answer, but I'll put back to the community, and that is, what do we do from here? How successful will this be? Will be determined in large part on what we as a society do with, in terms of making things available for these folks. Are they going to continue to have really very limited access to drug and mental health treatment? If so, my guess is we'll continue to do triple beam type things over the next several years, and hope that Senator Moran will continue to fund them, and we'll continue to do this and arrest people to keep the high crime times of the year in the summer down and keep things under control. But if we're ever going to truly make a difference and get these 500 folks so I don't see them again, that should be the goal, shouldn't it? That these 500 felons get held accountable. Whatever happens to them in the justice system. They're convicted, they do their time, they get probation, whatever it is. But the goal would be for them not to come back, and that's a separate conversation. But in the meantime, law enforcement does what it's sworn to do, and that is uphold the laws and go and find the people who break them, and we'll continue to do that. Sheriff?
Yeah, I don't want to drone on that point very much, but we've been keeping statistical information. Within 3 years of someone being incarcerated at the jail, they will be back. So the recidivism rate is 62% after 3 years. When you quickly do the math, that's 310 of the 500 people will be back to jail. So that's a problem. Like I said, it's, when we're trying to attack violent crime and the stuff that's going on, these operations, you have to do them. They're great operations. But the fact of the matter is that it's the backside of the system that is suffering right now, and we cannot maintain what we're doing without changing some things here in the state of Kansas. And so with that said, I don't think that, not trying to doom or gloom anything, but I've been doing this for 30 years and it's cyclical. And I think that's what not just Wichita, but the Sedgwick County has seen, is those cyclical trends going up with violent crime and with persons or property crimes. And a lot of it is, again, due to the drug abuse that we have going on in this county.
I'm not sure who wants to take this, Sheriff, DA, Deputy Chief Head, or Ron. I don't know who wants to take it, but we got 930 arrests, 520 felony? 556, thank you. And 119 gang members. I hate to sound like a cliche, but do we have a gang problem that is cyclical as well? Was that an area of focus in particular?
Well, I walked up here. I might have to walk away. but the reality is gangs exist in the United States in every major city. Let's not walk around that issue. Part of what Triple Beam is from the federal perspective is a gang enforcement initiative. It's a collaborative effort to arrest gang members who have warrants for their arrest. It is focused on violent crime and violent criminals, and in many cases, those are gang members. And for us to, in any community, I was a police chief in Kansas for 14 years. I get it, the question about gangs and are they here and do they exist? The answer to that is we have to deal with it at whatever level it exists. And if there's a gang problem anywhere, it's a gang problem everywhere, because these folks don't stop. They move. Wichita, Kansas is between Chicago and Dallas. So is Kansas City, Kansas. So is Kansas City, Missouri. So these things exist nationwide, and that's why this initiative is designed to assist in addressing this issue.
We'll take one more question. All right, well, that concludes our press conference today. Appreciate everyone coming out here. I know everybody will be here if they want to chat one-on-one just a little bit, so thank you for being with us again.